For those who know me, they know I'm an architect, and everyone's looking at this and saying, why are you doing this comic book for? And this is my little story, okay? My name is David Wong. I'm a fifth generation Canadian. Very proud of the fact that I am a Canadian, though my ancestors started some nation south of the border. And we'll learn about this nation here as I move along. First thing is that I've got to be honest here. I've always wanted to become a cartoonist since I was a kid, but having Asian parents, there's no way that I could become a cartoonist. So I wanted to follow my other passion, which is becoming a frog biologist. And again, it was either that or the chicken feather stick. So I said, okay, I'll do something decent. I'll become an architect. So that's what I did. One of the things I have to admit is that I was a really, really tough kid to look after. I was really rotten, handful, and I haven't changed a bit. I think they call it attention deficit now, but one of the things I want to talk about is history in itself. Most kids think of history as a very boring topic. Henry was saying that, so I thought, I'm going to try something different. There's something I really want to do something I really wanted to do when I was young, and that was do a comic book. We're going to do a comic book or graphic novel. Have fun doing it because, these are your own little things like getting back to people. And one of the best things I did was I put a lot of Chinese swear words, and the editors and the guys were just going through this, and they don't know what it means, of course. They made me take all the good, nasty words like, what word I go like, go hump a chicken. I think I left that one in there. But I have nastier words like, there's young people here, but I won't really see it. SOB and things like that. Because, you have to convey the feeling of some of the people, some of the words. And they made me do some research. And they asked me, David, did people use that word, let me think of a word now, like damn you or whatever, right? And that was a pretty nasty word there. Or go to hell. Those are really nasty words, equivalent to the F word now we have in today's society. So I had some fun. I went back in time and looked for 18th century swear words. And I found some really good ones. And I had them in there, but they made me take them all off because they were too nasty, because they say, well, some people who are sensitive to, these names may be offended. So I left the Chinese one there, like Kai-I. Hey, anyone knows what Kai-I means? So I wrote it in English, K-A-I-A-I-I, right? All right? And there's some other ones in there too, but I'm not going to say it because I'm going to be arrested. So those were left in there, so have fun, okay, if you guys are going to do a book. I gave a presentation to our neighbors to the south. I was down at near UCLA in San Francisco. So I had to make them feel really proud that there's a lot of American content. So I talked about the old gold mining town, gold rush towns there, and I had to let them all know where Vancouver was. So there it is. There's our little town, Vancouver. So I had a lot of fun, again, because I wanted this to be a resource for people to learn. And I had a goal that every page they've got to learn something new, something interesting, without them even knowing about it. So I embedded information into my little book here. And of course, we talked about the usual stuff, the Exclusion Act of 1882 in the US, our head tax here in Canada in 1923. And more important, I want to talk about some heroes. Because not every single person was we can say, and every single white person was a racist. I want people to know that there were also people who stood up for everyone. And one of them was Mark Twain. And some of the folks in the audience, the Asian Americans, were really offended. Because, he was a bloody racist, David. Well, don't use the word bloody, an awful racist. I think they had used that word. And I go, well, why? What makes you think so? Because, well, he used the word Chinaman, Chinaman this, Chinaman that. So I said, if you go back 100 years ago, Chinaman was a term they used to describe, Asians. We call them Asians now, but one time we call them, Orientals or whatever. And then there's Chinamen, there's Englishmen, there's Frenchmen. So that might be a reason. But, if you look at what he did, he wrote a book called Roughing It. I think it was 1871. And he actually talked about the why a Chinese person was actually valuable to American society. And he actually had an audience with Ulysses Grant, the president at the time, and talked about this. We had the same here in Canada. Senator Allman, he also stood up and spoke. And there were many others. And I had to make sure that I gave pages to recognize these individuals who well, not so much Mark Twain, but other people who maybe are forgotten through time. So that to me was very important. One of the more important things I wanted to talk about and show was the long and respectful relationship between Aboriginal First Nations people and the Chinese community. And this is something I really want to capture in my book. So I'll let you guys read it, and so it's in here. Let's just go, like for example, when I talk about learning, the Ottawa, the central tower there, it's different from what we have today because it burnt down, and there's a little bit about there, the map of Canada, how it used to be. It used to be District of Athabasca, and how our, so these are things that people would learn along the way. That last spike, there's several last spikes, and it was bent, and so I want to have fun showing that. Some of the heroes we have, Larry Kwong, first Chinese NHL player, Shirley Yu Fong, first Chinese-American assemblywoman, but it's also about healing. The main message I want to carry out is about let's not carry the hatred and the disrespect that our ancestors had. It's all about learning. And if we can learn about these things and pass on to the next generation, I think it'd be a nicer place. And this story here, one of my penultimate stories, is about Frank Wong. Frank is a person in town. It's a real hero to me and to many. He served for Canada at a time when Chinese were not recognized as citizens. Frank ended up in Normandy at D-Day, came back to Canada. His daughter married a Canadian whose father served for Nazi Germany, and he was also at Normandy Beach on the other side. And their children married, and they're still happily married today. So this is a true story. So that's in my book, and these are some things I want to capture. And I also want to talk about the reconciliation efforts that's happened of recent. This is a Tacoma. There was a thing called the Tacoma method, where they burnt down the Chinatown Tacoma, and they were proud of it and called it the Tacoma method. A few years back, the city of Tacoma recognized this injustice and created a park. And of course, we have our own. We have our Prime Minister apologizing for the head tax. And recently, Betty Luke, the lady in the center, her brother was the first Chinese-American elected official in the Pacific Northwest. The Wing Luke Museum is named after him. And of friendship, I wanted to emphasize the relationship of Aboriginal peoples and of the Chinese. So this is one of the things I tried to capture, that all peoples are brothers. But sorry, I just got to go through this really quickly because I see Hannah there breathing down my neck. So thank you, everyone. Question time, right?
I'll just start with the schools. When we worked with TC Squared, the Critical Thinking Consortium, the whole rationale was to work with teachers right away. They're a nationwide set of teachers. And so we had done a project, a group of us before, on the anniversaries of the 1907 riot in 2007. And we worked with the BCTF and TC Squared at that time. And what it was 6 teachers created these learning resources on the 100th anniversary of that. Immediately upon the completion of it, 109 teachers adopted the resource. And the reason why is because teachers only adopt things that other teachers that they trust produced, and when another social studies 10 teacher says, yeah, I use this, it works, then they will adopt it. And so rather than trying to work in a way in which we would come to try to convince schools, the Ministry of Education or whatever. There's a lot of official curriculum and resources that are sitting on shelves at the Ministry of Education that no one uses because someone produced it for a teacher without actually talking to a teacher. So the model we repeated here that we did with the 1907 anniversaries project was work with teachers, have them produce the resources. And so right now TC Squared is debuting it at professional development days across the country in every province. I show up every once in a while and say, this is cool, but I don't matter really to a social studies 10 or social studies 6 teacher. it's another teacher who says this works or this is why I like it that matters. And so in some sense, if there are teachers here, if you go play the games and things and you like it, then you're sort of emailing another teacher and saying, hey, this is a cool thing that I heard about or I was at MOV. That's what's going to get it distributed and used. And so that's the lesson in some sense that we didn't learn. It's that we sat with teachers and we talked about, and we asked things like, when do you do something new and why? And it never was some guy at UBC told us it was good. It was always a fellow teacher, emailed me or sent me something as an attachment or said, hey, there's this URL, check it out if you need to do this or that. And so, and we don't track that because that's actually very, we track it on our website and when people download and use stuff, but we've seen adoption and use of things across the board. It's just that we've allowed it to operate in that organic way between teachers, and that's why we were so important to work with TC Squared in the first place, because they were a nonprofit that was across Canada. Normal people think of as history versus what is the official or the academic. There's various other forms of official history, and so what's missing to me is not as much something that's not being done, but a way of having conversations across those divides between museums and academics, between museums and the people they serve. The 19th Century Museum was created to sort of edify and educate the unwashed and uneducated, and so it was a one-way process. To me, the transfer of knowledge is always this two-way process that goes, and that can go between generations, like we've been talking about, but also even just between, again, having conversations with David and talking about what he's trying to do and what we're trying to do at UBC, but they're not different. Mm-hmm. And once you start to have more of those kinds of conversations across, then I think you're getting a broader sense of history. So what's missing in some sense are the ways in which we've separated out history between capital H official histories and social histories, popular histories, and things like that. And so technology, again, to me, is one of the tools to be used so that people can do their own histories, keep them recorded, and we can save them, we can distribute them, we can have conversations around those stories that you've mentioned.